Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of I'm Not Gonna Be Quiet. My name's Danica, and I'm your host. If this is your first time joining us, or if you've been with us since the beginning, it's important for me to share that this is a space where folks step into this circle of community to share their pursuit of liberation after periods of remaining silent about their experienced pain and harm. In each interview, we get an opportunity to hear from our guests and learn from them what they refuse to be quiet about, what their silence cost them, and the price they paid for liberation. You're here, I'm here. We may as well try to get free together. So in today's episode, we're going to do it a little bit different, similar to our first episode where it's just going to be me. So I'm not actually interviewing myself, but I'm sharing some thoughts on some things that have transpired over the last several weeks. We're going to be talking about trauma. In our first episode, I talked a little bit about how my area of expertise is trauma. I operate as a trauma therapist and a facilitator for 501c3s and for-profit businesses, companies, agencies, organizations. I thought today that we would talk about a trauma response that many people have never heard of, but a lot of people do, and it's called fawning. Fawning is essentially compulsive people-pleasing, willing to go along to get along, but it is in the pursuit of your own safety, which matters. I wanted to talk about this because there's a lot of shame that comes with fawning. But just like all of the other trauma responses, fight, flight, freeze, and face, it's necessary. Those trauma responses show up so that you can get yourself out of crisis and to safety. The caveat to that is if you remain in that trauma response, then it becomes harmful to you and often harmful to others. So last week, I went to a seminar on decentering whiteness and a conversation on reparations. I thought it was going to be very interesting. And I was curious because I hadn't really done a lot of thinking about reparations. I just think, yes, give it all. But I sat in this seminar, and can I tell you, it was the most bizarre experience. I mean, it was a pretty diverse group of people, but I legit felt like I was in an episode or a scene out of Get Out. Everybody was kind of frozen. And there were two presenters, one white woman and a black man. And when the white woman spoke, she just had this like frozen smile on her face. And so it begs for me to give context. This was like a Quaker seminar. And so they were lifting up this person that was knee deep in the trafficking and murder, rape, etc. of Africans, right? They called him an abolitionist, but I didn't hear any evidence that he was an abolitionist because I didn't hear anything about him freeing enslaved folks. I heard him feel bad about whooping human beings, but he scheduled it every Monday and never stopped. So I'm going to digress on that. But the more interesting thing happened with the Black presenter because he just kind of had this very kind of jokey way of presenting the material. It also didn't even seem like it was his material, which left me and others thinking that this was written for him, and he was asked to be there as a token. And so at the end of this seminar, what we thought was the end, this elder sis stood up and was like, listen, y'all not gonna leave here feeling good and going off to lunch and really not doing the work on decentering whiteness and dismantling white supremacy. We're not going to do that. And so it was a very sobering moment where she brought the truth. And right in front of my eyes, this Black man facilitator had essentially a come to Jesus moment. It seemed like he was having an internal crisis because he talked about realizing that perhaps he was chosen to do this work because he was seen as the safe Black person, the good Negro. And so this led me to wanting to talk about fawning, because a lot of people know all the other trauma responses, right? Like fight, flight, freeze, face. But most people don't talk about fawning. And we learn to fawn when we realize that we can stay safe by helping to appease. I think a lot of people that go into the helping industry go into it out of our own trauma, right? Like, this happened to me, I don't want it to happen to anybody else, or this is what I witnessed and I have a way, I think I know how to help people. For many of us who go into the helping profession, we are the helpers professionally and in our personal lives, right? We're the person that people dump all their stuff on. We're the person that people are always asking to fix their lives. We're the person that people come to when their lives fall apart, when they need money, when they need guidance, when they just need all things. And in our professional spaces, sometimes we are also the person who commits egregious acts because it keeps us safe. And so I thought to talk about this because I have empathy for that person. Again, and I feel like I can hold that person accountable. And so when you are in a toxic space, whether it's platonic, romantic, professional, etc., and people will less likely ask you to do things that they already know is a no for you. And so sometimes a no is a period. Sometimes no is an exclamation point. Sometimes no is a comma, which means sometimes it's just no explanation, or no, that is absurd. You need to know that that is offensive and that is, you've crossed a line. Or no, I can't right now, but I might be able to by the end of the week. And so the more you use these tools to recover, reclaim yourself, the more you feel empowered and the more you get to return to yourself. And so I want to just remind you to offer grace to yourself. Maya Angelou talks about when you know better, you do better. We're hoping that's the case. We're hoping that people will recognize that what they're doing isn't serving them and it's not serving others. And so one of the questions that I always give people in my individual sessions or trainings when they're unsure about what it is they're doing, they're feeling some ambivalence, is ask the question, how does this serve me? If the answer is, it doesn't, get yourself out of there. Don't do it. So I just want to continue this conversation because I think it's relevant. I think it's necessary. I think it's going to offer a lot of healing to folks. Right? My goal is not to shame people. I think it's important to acknowledge that sometimes our highest self doesn't show up because the environment doesn't allow for it. Sometimes we've done something so frequently that we've altered the core of who we are, but all of that can be reclaimed. So let's keep this conversation going. If you haven't already, follow me on all the social media platforms. Thank you for joining me for another episode of I'm Not Gonna Be Quiet. Be well, everyone.